the Ethical IP panel. We're joined by Rick Doblin, Graham Pechenik, and Chris Brines, as well as a moderator from Zuber Lawler, Dr. Jayashree Mitra. Dr. Jayashree, I'll let you take the floor and introduce the panel here. Maybe I will do that. It looks like connection lost there. So, Graham, why don't we start with you here? If you want to introduce yourself, where you're working and what you're up to in the space.
Sure, and I'm delighted to be here and delighted to be joining Rick and Chris, and an honor to be part of this conversation, which has come to so much attention lately. So it's really a pleasure to get these minutes to discuss it. But my name is Graham Pechenik. I am a patent lawyer. I got my start at firms working in the pharmaceutical space for large pharmaceutical companies, and then spent a few years representing big tech companies, particularly the Android ecosystem, and then started my own firm, first where I worked with cannabis clients, and now where I work almost entirely actually with companies in the psychedelic space. So the sort of the evolution of how patents interface with the ethical norms of the space has been on my mind. So I'm been very delighted to be now in conversation with some of the other most deep thinkers, I think, about this. So it's a pleasure to be here, and thank you for having me as part of this.
Beautiful, and thank you for inviting and introducing me to Chris. Chris, maybe if you want to hop in and introduce yourself here.
Great. Yeah, thank you so much. And likewise, just want to echo the sort of honor and privilege of getting to be here and to connect with you all. Like Graham, also a registered patent attorney. I have kind of a similar background in terms of having done a lot of patent litigation, worked at litigation at the International Trade Commission, a lot of litigation against what are known as patent trolls in the tech world. And I also have worked at RPX, Rational Patent Exchange, which is a defensive patent aggregator. I'm actually still a senior director of client relations there, but I'm here sort of in my own capacity today, and also sort of in connection to a different side of background, which is one, I have a background, a master's in theological studies, and have spent a lot of time doing work on interfaith dialogues and thinking about what it means to create inside of the economy and sort of the sacred experience of creativity more generally, and then thinking more collectively about what that means vis-a-vis and interfacing with the intellectual property system. So I'm happy to be here with sort of some insights from a couple of perspectives. But thank you all again for having me here, and look forward to the.
Fantastic. And last but not least, a man that's definitely used to being on our platform, Mr. Rick. Great to have you on again. Thanks for joining us.
Yeah, my pleasure. I'll just say that, I started the Multidisciplinary Association for Psychedelic Studies in 1986. Since then, we've raised over $100 million in donations. So we're a nonprofit that owns 100% of a public benefit corporation, which is our pharmaceutical arm. We have about 85 people in the public benefit corp, around 35 people in the nonprofit, all supported by donations. And we've just finished our first phase 3 study. It'll be published in Nature Medicine. And we're thinking more and more about the rise of the for-profits and the patent systems. And we've had an anti-patent strategy for use patents. And I'll just say that I'm sympathetic with the idea of patenting original invention. I'm nervous about people doing overbroad patents aggressively to try to block other people from entering the space.
Perfect. Thank you for joining us, Rick. And Dr. Jayashree, it looks like your internet is back on. So we've done introductions for everyone, and I'll leave it to you to introduce yourself and get into the panel action.
Fantastic. First, my apologies. I had a bit of an internet problem. I'm a partner at the law firm of Zuber Lawler. I'm based out of New York. I started life as a neuroscientist, and as fate had it, I became a lawyer. But again, I was lucky in that I can work on areas and technology that really concern the human brain. So it's an absolute pleasure to welcome my fellow panelists. And without much ado, let's get on with the panel. And Rick, I'm going to start with you. As you just mentioned, to patent or not to patent, that is the question. And MAPS has had an ideological position on the approach to patenting. So if you can give a short overview of where that philosophy came from, and then we can move to what your recent developed thoughts are on the subject.
Yeah. So the same year that I started MAPS in 1986, a fellow named Howard Lotsoff started a company called NDA International, which was to try to develop Ibogaine into a medicine for opiate addiction. And he started that in a for-profit way. And throughout the late 80s and early into 90s, I saw various researchers start seeing each other for intellectual property related to Ibogaine. And it felt to me like that was really destroying the field. And so I contacted their lawyer who had got the use patent for Ibogaine for opiate addiction. I said, I would like you to help me develop an anti-patent strategy so nobody could patent MDMA for any uses, that I didn't want us to be putting all this energy into making MDMA into a medicine, and then somebody come along and make patents. So that has been approach basically is also we wanted to stimulate the field so that we felt like sharing everything that we do, sharing all of our interactions with the FDA, putting our treatment manuals, not only not patenting things, but encouraging other people, even to competition, was what we needed to do to build the field. Now we do have a decision to make in that we have IP on the basis of the production of the MDMA in large quantities for commercial, and we also have IP on the encapsulation process. And we have been thinking that we would just make all that public, and but we are now starting to look at that. Is that really the way that we should go? We've gotten all these funds from donors. We have a short window under data exclusivity, which we can talk about later, not a patent, for the sale of MDMA, where we have exclusive use of our data. Nobody could use it for generics, but they could create their own data. That's how it's different than patents. And so we're wondering, are we fundamentally ideologically opposed to patents? I'm not opposed to patents for original inventions. We do have these original inventions. So that's an issue that we're trying to address right now. What do we want to do with the IP that we have about production patents? Do we want to make it public, patent it, and then make it public? We're still trying to figure that out.
So you raise an interesting point about data exclusivity, and perhaps you can provide a bit of background for those who are not from the pharmaceutical space. But just to ask my question is, there are different ways of protecting your work. I will not say the innovation, but because that really goes to its IP, but there are different ways of protecting the work you generate. As you said, data is extremely valuable. So if we are not to go the patent route, what other routes can we consider, and how do they compare with the patents?
Okay, well, data exclusivity, it turns out Ronald Reagan in 1984 passed a law to provide incentives for developing drugs that are off patent. And the data exclusivity provisions mean that if you make a drug into a medicine in the United States, no one can use your data for 5 years to market a generic. And they can't even apply to market generic until the data exclusivity period is expired. And it'll take FDA at least 6 months to review a generic manufacturer's application. We're being required by FDA post-approval, if we get approval on phase 4, to do pediatric studies. And in order to do, so we have to do 12 to 17-year-olds. Now we're doing 18-year-olds or over. You get an extra 6 months in data exclusivity as an incentive to do these pediatric studies. So in a sense, we will have 6 years of data exclusivity. It differs from a patent in that other sponsors, if they want to compete with us, they could generate their own data. But it will take them probably 6 years and way more cost than we've spent, because we have so much donated labor and we're doing it in a nonprofit context. People are working under market. In Europe, it's up to 11 years of data exclusivity. Other than the data exclusivity, I'm not really aware of other ways to protect what we're doing. But again, it gets back to what is our mission. Now, because again in 86, and things are now different over the last couple of years with the rise of the for-profit companies, our mission is mass mental health, stimulate the industry, get everything going. Now things are going. So that's where we're starting to rethink some things. But we're not trying to protect anything actually other than through the use of data exclusivity. Our treatment manual, we could potentially try to say that our treatment is unique. Other companies have tried to, talk about patenting psychotherapeutic methods. But our therapeutic method, even though we've customized it for MDMA PTSD, we didn't invent it. It came from Stan Groff. It came from early LSD research. So we feel that the treatment manual, we've put all that in the public domain as well. So I think, at least as far as I'm aware of, we could try to add, there's nothing other than data exclusivity. We could add wearables. Let's say we added a wearable into our therapy. Maybe we could patent that. Other people are trying to patent wearables, so I don't even know if that's something that we could do. But I imagine that we might run into challenges if we start adding wearables to tell you when you're about to relapse or something. I imagine that there's loads of patents on that already. So, but my sense is beyond data exclusivity, there's nothing really that we're looking at to protect what we're doing.
And that gives a segue into a question for Graham. Graham, Rick mentioned the mission statement for MAPS, and this is a strong concept in the psychedelic community about having an ethical approach towards the use of the knowledge. As an experienced patent prosecutor, somebody who gets patents for clients in the pharmaceutical industry, how do you view the unique nature of the industry in the context of what we know about patent law?
So the way I would start answering that would actually be to back up from what I think is the bigger question, which is how to use patents to support the mission of a organization like MAPS and the ethics of companies in the psychedelic space. Because I think there are unique challenges there around how to protect patents in the psychedelic space. But I think to sort of get there, we need to resolve the questions around problematic patents just generally. The issues that Rick, you pointed out around overbroad patents and around researchers suing each other for patents that are, you said, I think, destroying the field. Those aren't new questions at all. I mean, the issue with low quality patents is one that is faced in every industry that has patents. And the issue around patents being used in an anti-competitive way to discourage and suppress innovation in a field is something that goes back to, I think, as far as even Watt, who had invented the steam engine. His name is the Watt, and also I think horsepower comes from him. He, after patenting the steam engine, directed all of his intention and all of his attention and resources suing competitors and basically trying to extract revenues from everyone else in the market. And during that time, when he had a patent, all the innovation basically stopped, and the steam engine was only used to remove water from mines. And then 31 years later, when his patent expired, there was this explosion of innovation around the steam engine, and then it was put into everything else that drove a lot of other innovation. So this is something that isn't really new to psychedelics. So we can think of ways to limit the number of low quality or overbroad patents like people are doing, with putting prior art into the public domain, making sure prior art is available to examiners. And we can do things too to sort of avoid the problems of the situation with Watt and the steam engine. So, Elon Musk and Tesla made a pledge to put the patents that cover electronic vehicle technology into to some extent, the public domain, so people could use them and build an innovation ecosystem around the patents that they had. So there are these solutions to problems that are just in any industry with patents. The bigger question, I think, and the question that makes issues unique to the psychedelic space, is figuring out how to use patents in a way that supports missions of MAPS and other organizations, because the patent system as a whole, it embodies the ethical assumptions of the economy that's around it, even if it's not explicit. So the assumptions of the patent system are to incentivize profit maximization and winner-take-all benefit concentrating economies that are different, perhaps, than what is being said in the psychedelic space. So certainly in the psychedelic space, there have been statements about how to use business practices in more ethical ways. So the statement on open science and open praxis, when it was announced I think the article that announced it said not just cooperation over competition, but said so with an exclamation point at the end.